Awesome. Well, then, welcome back to Kicking Tables, Austin. It's so good to see you again.
Yeah, it's really good to see you guys too. It feels like not that long since I've been here, but the pandemic has like compressed time to
Oh yeah,
this
Yeah.
weird
everything
short
feels
but
shorter.
long
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah, I mean, well,
Uh,
we had you on for Veiled Fate, so how long ago
yep.
was that? Was
We launched Veiled Fate in I want to say October or the end of September last
Wow,
year.
so it was like almost a year,
Almost,
but it does
yeah, it's
not
been
Yeah.
11
feel like
months.
that.
Mm-mm. And
Wow.
the funny thing is, at the very beginning of the pandemic, I was like submitting files for Moonrakers. So like my
Oh,
entire board game career has been in the pandemic, but it feels like I've been working in board games for
for,
forever at this point. So
we feel like it too, because that's all we've ever known you for. So
yeah, that's true.
But now, of course, you have Mythical Mischief coming, which is
Yeah.
it's actually very different from Moonrakers or Veiled Fate. Tell us about Mythical Mischief. What kind of game is this? How does it play?
So this is my fault. It's Mythic Mischief, but I shouldn't have named the
Oh,
game Mythic Mischief when there's Mystic Mischief and Mythical Mischief, which is the two common terms. So don't even feel bad
that
for
was
saying
my
that.
bad. I had just written
No,
it
no, no.
down wrong. It's good on screen.
Yeah, Mythic Mischief. No worries. I literally said Mystic Mischief in our first interview for this game, and Zach just looked at me and was like, "Are you kidding me right now? Like, how's anybody else supposed to get it right if you're not getting it right?" No, we really like the name now, but right then I was like, "Did we misname this?" But anyway, very different game. So Moonrakers and Veiled Fate couldn't be more different,
Right.
and then Mythic Mischief is the same. It's just very, very different from all of them. And we're blessed to have three very different people on our design team, and it's kind of shown in the three different games that we're launching.
Yeah.
And this one was Max Anderson, who's on our design team, works at the studio. This was his baby. He's been working on it for maybe 2-3 years now.
Okay.
And it was so different the first time I heard about it. First time I heard about it, it was called Clicks, and it was like students that were like
Ah,
cheerleaders and
gotcha.
like the jocks or whatever. And it didn't quite have the charm of like being different enough from other games for me to like it. And so I was kind of like, ah, yeah, this is good. Like, but then the second time he showed it to me, it was it was just night and day different. And I was like,
Okay.
oh, I'm really excited about this now.
So it
So
was
yeah,
always based in a school right from the
it
beginning?
was always based in school from the beginning.
Okay.
The move to like mythical monsters was later, and that was more just because we wanted to have more fun with the artwork and make it feel a little bit more
Yeah.
fantastic.
Okay.
Moving bookshelves in a library sounds fine when it's magical. I don't really think of moving a bookshelf in a library at like a high school. Like that
No,
doesn't
I'd
make
I'd be
It's
afraid of
exciting
it,
for that
doing the
stuff.
domino effect as boom boom.
yeah,
It was like, I gotta go.
yeah, that is basically what would happen, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, so it definitely just it fit the game better. It was more fun to us. So that change happened maybe like into production, I think. So
Okay.
yeah,
So
or gameplay. So.
tell us about the game. How does it play? What are you doing?
Yeah, so it's so funny. We had a conversation with Alex at Board Game Co. about whether or not it is an abstract game, and it was a very long conversation. We have decided it is an abstract game, but it doesn't feel like you're playing an abstract game, and I'm going to talk about why. But you are playing as a faction of students, so very similar to the beginning. You could be the jocks, who are Frankenstein's monsters. You
Oh,
could
okay.
be the you could be the nerds, who are the wizards. You could be the mean girls,
That's
who are the
me.
witches.
How did you know I was a wizard? Ow!
I could tell it was the beard.
It's
I
the
think.
beard. I know.
It's
I
That
always
was
got the.
very
beard.
wizardly beard.
I just
It
need the
is a
hat.
very wizardly beard. So you're playing as one of those factions, and you are in the library when you are not supposed to be in the library. And the thing about this library is it is a magical library, and there are definitely things in the library that are not for students yet. They need some, not parental guidance, they need some teacher guidance. And so these kids were playing hide and seek in the library, and they were making a bunch of trouble and getting into things they weren't supposed to. So the school hired a Tomekeeper, and it is basically this huge, menacing librarian who's in charge of keeping track of all the books. And he does not like kids in his library unauthorized. And so the kids, of course, decided to make it a game
Of course.
where who can hide in the library the longest without getting caught.
Okay.
And so you have 2 or 4 or even 3 factions in the library, and it is your goal to get the other students in the path of the Tomekeeper on your turn and not get caught. So what it would look like is I would take a turn, and we're on a 5x5 grid, and I have different powers than you. It's completely asymmetric.
Right.
And I am going to use my powers to try to get you on a path. And the Tomekeeper has these destination markers on that 5x5 grid. And those are the returned books list. It's the books he's putting back in the library, so we know where he's going roughly.
Okay.
And so we are trying to get you, I'm trying to get you on that path.
Right.
And then after my turn's over, he's going to take 4 steps toward that marker, basically. And then on your turn, you're going to do the same thing, and he's going to take 4 more steps. And it's a nice little brain burner puzzle. And when you have another faction, another person with you on your team, you're both simultaneously taking all your actions to try to synergize your movements to get the most people caught.
I liked your description that it's a puzzle, because it really is. You're trying to figure out how to, like, because you said you know where the Tomekeeper's going.
Yep.
So the puzzle is figuring out how to use your moves to, I guess, trap your opponents.
Yep.
Right.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And it early in development, we had some playtesters that were trying to plan out 2 or 3 moves ahead, and I think that adds to analysis paralysis. But the thing about this game is, every piece of the board is movable. There's walls that are bookcases that are on the board, and I might have a power that moves that, and suddenly the Tomekeeper is going a totally different direction that you thought. And so you can't plan 2 turns ahead. You got to just plan for that turn. How can I maximize this turn? Which I love, because I don't sit there thinking, like, I'm terrible in chess. Like, I cannot play speed chess. I have to play long game chess where I'm just looking at it for an hour. And that's not fun for the other person, because I'm just sitting there, right? Yeah. So it forces you to just kind of like focus in on one thing. But yeah.
That is cool.
So the game itself, it really feels almost like the library scene in Harry Potter.
It's like it's the restricted section in Harry. It's exactly what I was thinking.
It feels like that small part of the movie. Was that any inspiration for you guys?
You know, it wasn't for the mechanics, because before it was mythical, those mechanics were in place. But it definitely fits, doesn't it? It makes you think of it. And it's funny, people are like, this is like the scene from Monsters University meets the scene from the Harry Potter.
Yes.
And you like put those together. And I thought that was hilarious. And I love that comparison, because it's just a fun moment.
Well, you mean magic school, library, Harry Potter restricted section. That's the first thing I went to.
I love that it's all in the library too. It's like it all in that one zone, which is really cool and thematic.
Yeah, it definitely helped us keep everything very thematic, and like the power-ups that you get are tomes. They're books that are magical that will permanently upgrade your character. So those are scattered around the board.
That's cool.
So we were able to tie a lot of that in, which is fun.
Tell us a bit about each of the factions. I mean, how differently do they play? Like, if I chose a different faction in one game and then, and then a different one in another, will it feel like a different game to me?
Okay, so kind of, and not really. So what we love about the game is, if you already know how to play, you should be able to pick up a new faction in less than 5 minutes.
Okay.
So unlike some asymmetric games where it's like a totally different game where like I have to relearn all my mechanics, you have 4 main abilities and then 2 special abilities. And those main abilities are the same, but then they interact differently with... So I'll just explain it. So the first movement, the first ability you have is move. So that's the same. You just move 1 space.
Everybody can move, yeah.
Yep. There's an action track that you have, and above that track are numbers of how much movement you have. And then you have a dice, which I have right here, which I'll get out. You probably won't even be able to see it. Dice that has 0 through 5 on it, and that's how you kind of track how much of that action I have left. So I would just tick this dice from 1 to 2 to 3, and then back down as I use those actions. And the number of actions that each faction starts with sometimes is very different. The Ghost factions, for instance, the Ghosts are much faster than other factions, and so they start with more of that. So that asymmetry is very simple. It's the same move, but some have more, some have less.
Sure, okay.
The other moves, so there's one called Move Mythic. This is how I'm going to move your characters around the board, not my characters. That is always completely different. You want to know about the differences between some factions. So the Wizards, since you are a wizard,
of course I am.
Yes, they switch places with another miniature mythic, either diagonally or orthogonally.
That's powerful.
They're a really, really good faction for Move Mythic. Now, the zombies, they have a move that makes you move on diagonals. So they don't switch with you, but you can move them diagonally in any direction from where they are, as long as there's not a bookcase or another mythic or the Tomekeeper in the way. So yeah, it's very different between every faction. The Frankenstein's monsters are the strong ones, so they actually throw you from one side of them to the other side of them.
Okay.
On diagonals and orthogonals, and that is extremely powerful because it's like moving you 2 spaces instead of 1.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
then after that, okay.
I love the wizard because the wizard could intentionally get in front of the Tomekeeper and then switch with someone.
Exactly.
That's like that's devious.
Yeah. I'm jumping ahead of myself a little bit, but they do have what we call an after lunch special. So there's 2 phases of the game. There's before lunch, and there's 3 destinations that the Tomekeeper takes. And as soon as he reaches the 3rd destination, you go to after lunch.
Okay.
And after lunch, every faction gets a new ability. They just ate. They're feeling really good. They got some more powers now. The Tomekeeper's actually slower after lunch too because he also had a big meal. He moves 3 instead of 4, but that's not important.
He was going for his afternoon nap.
Yeah, that's where he was headed.
Yeah.
The wizards have a portal, a permanent token that they can put on the board in 2 different places, and if they place it under them, they can warp a character onto the portal, and if they have another wizard on the other side of the portal, they can warp all the way across the board through the portal. So the wizards are definitely really good at moving people far.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Nice. Yeah, I'm definitely the wizard.
Yeah, you could come play. It'd be fun. The next ability is to move the bookcases around the library. And so the vampires, for instance, if there's a wall in front of them, they're going to move it to the side of them. They're hiding, basically, is how you should think of it. The Frankenstein's monsters, they're really strong. So instead of putting it to the sides of them, they're pushing it open like a door, pushing it away from them. And so every faction's just a little bit different on how they move the board or how they move the bookcases around the board, but it really affects your strategy because the Frankenstein's monsters, they can turn bookcases, which is really helpful. The wizards can only slide bookcases. They can never change the orientation of the bookcases. So every faction has like a really good of this, but not so good of that. The one ability that's always the same, there's never any difference, is Distract. And Distract, you start with none of it, but you can upgrade it across the game. And that makes the Tomekeeper move a space towards you. And that's really, really helpful for changing the destination of the Tomekeeper, because if there's multiple paths in the library, he's always trying to take the fastest one. But I might change which one's fastest by pulling him one space, one direction. So,
okay.
Yeah. But then there's a legendary ability, which you have tomes you can pick up in the library. If you put one of those on the board in the legendary ability slot, you can take that off and use it. But they're kind of single use, but you can recharge them, but it's very expensive to recharge them. But those are almost always going to be worth points. It's really powerful.
And ultimately, you just want to be the last ones in the library? Is that the goal?
So there's several different game modes.
Okay.
The classic mode is it's a race to 10 points, or to have the most points when the Tomekeeper's done putting all his books back in the day's over.
Okay.
My favorite way to play, though, is called Blitz mode, and it's a little bit more fast-paced. It is single elimination. You have 3 players per person that's playing, and you are trying to make your entire move in 2 minutes, which if you're playing on a team of 2, 2 minutes goes by really quick as you're talking about what's the best way to do it. And in that, it's single elimination. Once you're out off the board, you're done. So you can be permadeath in that. You can't be permadeath in the classic version.
Okay.
So.
Awesome. It sounds so much fun.
Yeah.
I'm glad you think so.
It really does.
So with the Tomekeeper, he's got his set path. How many different ways are there to affect that? Like for players, there's going to be cards. How many different ways are there going to be to affect the Tomekeeper's actual path?
Yeah, I would say anytime on a turn that I want to, I can almost always do it some way.
Okay.
And so the main ways you do it are that Distract, and then there's some legendary abilities that'll move the Tomekeeper, but really the way you affect his path is the bookcases. So if you think the Tomekeeper's in the middle of the board and he's headed to one of the corners, and he's got a pretty open path, but there's just one gap that I can close with a bookcase, suddenly he's got to go all the way around the board to get there. And you might have been hiding your mythics in that corner, but suddenly they're not safe anymore because I changed the path. And it happens often. I think it's funny at early plays of it, so your first maybe 2 plays of it, you're mostly just trying to move your enemies into the path. And then after that, something clicks, and you're just trying to change the way the Tomekeeper's walking, because you don't have to do all the work of moving people around if you can just change the way he's moving.
That's true.
Yeah.
What determines where he's going?
Yeah, so on the grid, the 5x5 grid, there is the card, the before lunch card, that has the destinations on it. So you have tokens that you're going to put on the board in those 3 spots. And then he is always taking the quickest path. Now, the is affected by what we call clutter. So it looks like piles of books on the floor. It's a little token, and there's 4 of those on the board. It takes 2 movement for anyone to move into that space, including the Tomekeeper. So you basically are counting out, okay, he's trying to get to destination 1. That's 4 steps away. And then he's got another path that's 5 steps away. So he's definitely going to take the fastest path.
Right.
Well, I might distract him 1 this way, and then suddenly this way is the fastest path. The one that was 5 became 4. So it's always going to be a little bit of like counting to try to figure it out. And I always love it. One person just assumed the Tomekeeper was going one way, and then they miscounted, and it's actually shorter to go this way, and they end up catching themselves, which is a negative point on their turn. And that's always just a comical moment when they realize, maybe I should have not been so excited about that turn and actually counted.
Is the destination of the Tomekeeper going to change each game?
There are 10 different cards, 5 before lunch cards and 5 after lunch cards, and you just choose 1 per game for each thing. So it's gonna be 1 of 5.
Awesome. So you're never really gonna know what path he's gonna take when you start a new game.
And going back to is it an abstract? That is one of the only unknowns. So one of the pillars of abstract games is perfect information, right? You always have perfect information. So something like chess, you have perfect information. You don't know what the destinations are going to be, and you don't know where the tomes are going to go out when you switch from the before lunch to the after lunch phase. Right. And there is a little bit of luck in that, because you might already have a player on a tome and get an upgrade for free, or you might have a player on a mythic on the first destination token, which is very bad for you, because the Tomekeeper's headed right for you next turn.
Yep.
So there's a little bit of luck there, and that was one of our arguments against it being an abstract. Not that we don't want it to be an abstract, but it's just there's a couple of things where it's like, is it an abstract? Alex has told us it is an abstract, and we take his word for it. But yeah.
Do you have any fun stories that you've had happen while playing it? And do you have a favorite? What's your favorite faction to play?
So my favorite is definitely the zombies.
Okay.
And it's just really nice to be able to move people on the diagonals, like I mentioned before. And that's because if you think about it, moving them orthogonally, which is how most of the factions do it, is they're taking 1-2 steps because your movement is orthogonal. So it would take them twice as long for me to move them diagonally. And then they also have an after lunch special. The wizards, if you remember, have the portal. That's their after lunch special. The zombies is way grosser. It's called decay. They're actually like leaving a little bit of flesh on the ground, and it's slippery. And so if another character steps on that spot, I get to choose a place to move them to, basically. That's orthogonal from that. And so combining those powers makes it really easy to move people a long distance. So I really like the zombies. Plus, they're skater kids, which is fun.
Nice.
They're very they're like the rebels of the school, if that makes sense. And then funny stories. I think one of my favorite stories is playing with Max. I was playing the zombies, and he was playing the Frankenstein's monsters, which is his favorite faction. And we had this rivalry going for a long time, and I needed to kill all 3 of his characters to win. I think he was at 9 points, and I was at 7 points. And so it looked really unlikely for me to be able to win. And so he was feeling pretty good, and I started my turn, and I just was like, I saw it. I was like, I can do this. And I did it really fast, and I said, all right, Tomekeeper's going to move, and then I caught all 3, and he was like, the zombies are too powerful, we need to nerf them. That was just like right away. Which I ended up agreeing. Their legendary ability got nerfed just a little bit. It went from 1 space to 2. You can move the Tomekeeper 1 space directly away from you now. It was 2 spaces directly away from you now.
Okay.
And basically, he had a guy hiding in a corner, and the Tomekeeper was headed to the totally other side of the board, and I just made the Tomekeeper take 2 diagonal steps to get him, and he was like, are you kidding me right now? So, anyway, that's probably my favorite story.
But you'll take the win.
I took the win, for sure.
Yeah, it still counts.
It still counts, yeah.
So you guys have made the switch from Kickstarter for your last game to Gamefound. Tell us a little bit about the decision to do that.
Yeah. So it was funny. I do a show called Ivy Backed that just talks about different active projects, and I compared Gamefound and Kickstarter quite often on there. And so when we changed to Gamefound, people were like, "Oh, Austin, you've said some negative things about Gamefound," and I was like, "Yeah." But once you get into the back end, you'll see why we changed. And so I have a long list of reasons, but we love to live stream, and we do live streams. We do at least 2 a week, just as a company. And then on launch day, we do all day live streams. And this is not the reason we switched, but it's a nice anecdote. Kickstarter does not let you embed live streams, which I think is very smart of them. There are too many active projects to monitor what the heck is going on that live stream, right? Like there could be terrible things happening in the live stream. So I get that. Gamefound is much smaller. They're much more focused on games. They can control the content way easier. It's a beta program, not just anybody can enter it. And so they allow live streaming on the platform. It's just embeddable right into the homepage. And so that was like one of those things that was like, oh, this is really cool. And we started digging in more. And I always, I've been asked this a bunch, so I have a lot of prepared stories. But like we had a thing going on with Kickstarter. We were trying to get somebody on the phone just to talk to them about something. And we tried 3 different times to actually just talk to a real person. And every time we just got an email back that had our answer in it, but they never even responded to, hey, do you want to hop on a phone call? We'd love to chat through this on the phone. Never got a response to that. It was always just ignored.
Yeah.
And we were kind of just fed up, and we emailed Gamefound. They're like, hey, we're pretty close to launch on this, but we're curious what it would look like to work with Gamefound. That night, it was literally like an hour later, I got an email from Gamefound, and they were like, we would love to have you guys on the platform. Can you guys do a call tomorrow morning? And the CEO of Awakened Realms was on the call.
Wow.
That next morning. And I was like, the customer service level difference between these two is wild. Like, it just blew us away. And right away, we're like, okay, I can see the benefits of this. And then our creative team got in there, and instead of GIFs, it's embeddable MP4s, which is like so much easier to load and so much better looking. It's 1,000 pixels wide instead of 670 pixels wide, so the page just looks way better. The comment section, you can like tag stuff in, so like you have threads of conversation instead of just random comments and a flood.
It's a much more dynamic platform.
Yep. That you can have like an actual outline. You know, if you look at a Kickstarter and it says like project story, and then like it always has risks and like risks and whatever. Yeah. And like that should be an actual outline where you can click shipping and you can click you know whatever, but it never is. And on Gamefound it actually is. You can actually click around and be like, oh, what was shipping again? I'm just gonna click on that section. It's not like scrolling for like 20 minutes to try to find stuff. And so there are just little things like that got us really excited about the Switch.
Are you worried you're not going to get as many eyes on the game, though, that way? Because it is 100%. A lesser-known platform, obviously.
Yeah, and it's funny because Kickstarter, they obfuscate where your leads are coming from. And so, like, if you look at Kickstarter's back end, it's like 70% of your leads are coming from Kickstarter. And it's just really hard to actually track that. And everyone knows it's not actually 70% or whatever the number actually is. And it's way easier to track ads on Gamefound. And so we're an animation studio. We do content for, Amazon and I'm gonna blank on a bunch of different people. But there's a bunch of large companies that we do that kind of work for, ad work for. And so we're very familiar with doing that ourselves. Okay. And I'm hoping that that's how we're gonna make up those eyeballs, is like actually being able to target things and also bringing our audience that we already have with us to Gamefound is the hope. But that is our major concern from just the Switch, because it is a smaller platform. Yeah. The other big bonus, though, is the integrated pledge manager. So we were really close with CrowdOx. We loved CrowdOx. We used them both on Moonrakers and Veiled Fate. And BackerKit and them merged, and we were excited to use them again. Obviously, when we had the Switch Gamefound, we were kind of sad to not be able to use them. But I am really excited to enter in all of the data and SKUs and all that once instead of twice, right? And like doing all of that information once. And then I'm really excited to not have to explain 1,000 times, like the number of customer service emails that I've gotten for both Moonrakers and Veiled Fate. I'm just like, hey, I never filled out my pledge. Kickstarter, why didn't you just take the information from Kickstarter? It's like, because Kickstarter doesn't let us do that. Yeah. And so just like having that fluid transition where we don't need to direct them to another website, we don't need to have them make a new login, we don't need to have them do any of that stuff. It's all just built into a Gamefound. It sounds really nice.
That's awesome.
Excited about that.
Well, you are now our official first guest to go to Gamefound.
Hey, wonderful.
So that's awesome. It's we haven't. Yeah, we don't know anyone else who's gone there yet, so that's awesome.
Yeah. Hey, we'll if it's a success story, we'll be thrilled and we'll be singing their praises. If it's not, we'll be like, hey, it was an experiment and it wasn't Gamefound's fault. It's just the audience isn't there yet.
Exactly. So, exactly.
Yeah, but I think they've proven that it's right where it needs to be. They've had some really good projects, and our friends Legend Academy from El Dorado is on there right now, and that's been staying pretty steady with where their most recent games have been on Kickstarter. So that encouraged us too. just to make the jump as well.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Excellent. Do you have any stretch goals or expansions that are planned for the game?
So yeah, if you want, I can talk about the pledge levels. This will actually be a little bit of behind the scenes. We haven't quite announced any of this yet. So stretch goals is not something we generally do. Veiled Fate had one, and it was a art book a lore book that Jesse from Quackalope was writing the lore for, and that's going to be a digital book that we deliver at delivery of the game. Moonrakers didn't have any stretch goals, and Mythic Mischief will have a couple, but they will not be content for the game. It won't be gameplay content. It won't be component upgrades.
Okay.
And the reason behind that is it's a little bit of smoke and mirrors as far as stretch goals go, and we really don't want to put things like dual layer boards on there and then not hit it, because we've always played with dual layer boards, and we don't want to put we want those, and it's really hard to rotate the dice if they don't have a well to sit in on the action trackers, and then we don't want to put linen finish on there because we want that already, and so we basically just everything's like it's black core cards, or
that's the core. Actually, that is the core experience, and there's okay.
So definitely the component upgrades are already just in the game.
Yeah.
The content upgrades are coming in the form of expansions, and the Ghosts expansion, which is the main one, is free on the Gamefound pledge. It'll be $20 after that. It's kind of a new thing. Lucky Duck does this really well, where it's called a Lucky Duck exclusive, and they'll sell it on the Kickstarter, or they'll give it away on the Kickstarter for free. But if you miss the campaign, you can still get it from their website. They print a limited number of extras, basically, that they sell on the website after. And so we're trying that model versus having it be like, oh, you missed the campaign, well, you'll never get this content for gameplay.
Right.
But also it's a good way to reward your backers by giving them it for free. And so to make it special, though, we made the ghosts glow in the dark. So they have a resin that actually will glow in the dark.
Nice.
This like light pink color. So I'm really excited about that just because I want that for myself. And then on top of that, there's 2 more faction expansions, both priced at $20. And so the base game is $59 plus those 2 expansions would be, let's see, what's that? $199 basically. And then there is a Headmaster pledge, though, that I think is going to be pretty unique as far as what it includes. And so it includes everything I just listed for $95. So it's already a $4 discount on the expansions, but that's not why you would back it. The reason you would use this pledge level is that it also comes with a second Tomekeeper, it comes with a second library board, and it comes with a second set of destination tokens and a second set of bookcases. And so what that means is if you have all 7 factions, you can literally play 2 separate games at the same time.
Wow.
And it's because the factions are the hard part, right? The library components are the easier part for us to make. And so if you have, up to 7 people, and then hopefully we'll have more expansions in the future and you can play up to 8, you could play a tournament of 2 1v1 games. You could have a 1v2 and a 2v2 game. You can do a bunch of different things that way. And then we actually have a game mode, Blitz. The 2v2 Blitz is both of those boards side by side. So you have a much larger library. You have 2 Tomekeepers.
Wow,
and
that's
so
cool.
I'm hoping that that's something that people get excited about, just because when you play with these asymmetric faction games, usually you have all the components you would need except for like the board to play 2 separate games at the same time.
Yep.
Yeah. That's a really neat idea. I really like the idea of sort of doubling your ability to play all at once.
Yeah. Well, all of our games have been up to 5 players, and really Veiled Fate is up to 8, and so we love that higher player count, and a lot of our fans love playing at 5 players. I actually got an email yesterday or a few days ago. Someone was like, "Man, it's only 1 to 4. Like, my family's 5 people. That's all we play." And I was like, "Just get the big box. So you can play a tournament mode. You'll be fine." And he was like, "Oh, that's great." So
that's awesome.
But yeah, it was a fun thing to be able to add, and to keep the gameplay all in under $100 was a goal as well. So that's, I think, 7 factions, three minis of factions. So that's 21 base minis and 2 Tomekeepers. So it's 23 minis, 20 bookcases. It's a lot of plastic.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
All right, we are at the stage in our show now where we do our lightning round. I don't know if we did this with you last time.
We did not.
I remember. Did we not? Okay,
I don't think so.
Yeah, I'm ready though.
All right, you're ready. You're prepared. All right, so 8 questions. First thing that comes to the top of your mind, all board game related.
Great.
Just about your preferences. All right, you ready?
I am.
All right. Favorite classic game?
Oof. how long are we talking? Twilight Imperium is classic, right? No.
It's getting there.
Old.
First edition.
Yeah, first edition. Oh, shoot. Man, but I was not a gamer when I played as a kid, but we played, is it 47 Dead End Drive? Is that, does that count? 13 Dead End Drive? Is that what it is? I think you're right.
Yeah.
That was the game I remember playing as a kid. Does that count? Is that
Yes,
count?
absolutely.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really like that game.
All right. Dice or cards?
Dice. I'm a dice guy.
Yeah, me too.
All right. Purchasing games, local game store or online?
Ooh, we have a great local cafe here called Game Point Cafe, and they actually do pre-orders for me. So I love
Nice.
doing that.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Your favorite game mechanic?
I should say deck building because of Moonrakers, but I might actually say 4X isn't a game mechanic; it's 4 game mechanics.
That's true.
But can I say 4X? Is that
Yeah,
all right?
that's fine.
Okay.
That's a style of game, sure. That
We're
makes
pretty
sense.
loose with the rules to these questions, so.
Yeah, we're not strict.
Most recent game purchase?
What do I still have in plastic? I just got Arnak not too long ago, and I've already played it on TTS, but I haven't played it in person. I really liked Arnak.
I want to play that game.
I picked that up as well. That's great.
Yeah.
All right. Favorite modern game?
Twilight Imperium.
Yeah, it's TI4. Yeah, with the Prophecy of Kings expansion, of course.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. Science fiction or fantasy?
Science fiction. Oh, that's so hard. I'm too big of a Star Wars nerd to say anything else, but I mean, huge Lord of the Rings nerd as well.
But Star Wars is fantasy.
Okay.
Science fantasy.
I'm definitely science. I can't answer that way. I'm gonna go science fiction.
Okay.
It's just
All right.
with a slight hesitation.
All right. And the last game you played?
Oh, well, Mythic Mischief, but that doesn't count. It definitely wasn't Lost Ruins of Arnak. Oh, you know what? We had a bunch of people. I played Decrypto pretty recently with. Okay. I accidentally let Becca Scott down and I lost it for our team, which is not what you want to do when you're playing with Becca Scott. You don't want to be the one that makes the team lose, but that's okay.
Well, at least she'll never forget you now.
Yeah, well, yeah, hopefully not. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, Austin, it's been such a pleasure having you back on the show. Before we let you go, what do you want people to really know about Mythic Mischief, and why should they go to Gamefound this time and back the game?
Yeah, Gamefound. I think what we love about it is that it's approachable asymmetry. We love asymmetric games. I love Twilight Imperium. I love things like Root, and some of those can be really hard to get to the table because it's really hard to teach the different factions and understand the game. And at its core, Mythic Mischief is simple. It's get the other people caught, don't get caught yourself.
Right.
But it's a very nice puzzle every time you play it, and it never feels the same. And so exploring the different factions and just the changing board state make it feel new every time. So
awesome.
I think that's what I would go with.
So everybody go check out Gamefound for Mythic Mischief. It will hit Gamefound on August 31st, so that's coming up fast. How long is it going to be there?
Yeah, so it'll be there, I think, till the 25th.
Okay.
On that Friday. Yeah.
Awesome. So almost just about a month, 4 weeks. So everybody go check that out. Austin, thank you so much for coming back to the show. It's been a great talking to you again.
Thanks for having me, guys. This was great. Hello, I'm Austin Harrison with IV Games, and I'm a little surprised that you haven't subscribed yet to OMG Nexus. I'm subscribed. I can't believe that you aren't yet, and you should do that. It's right there.